Thank you everybody for hopping on. So today's webinar is going to be on medical and labs. When we say medical, that's a fairly broad area. So we want to make sure that that includes some of your life sciences companies, your vets, dermatology practices, hospitals, health systems, and basically things along those lines. So if you could just go to the next slide, Megan. We're just going to do a quick rundown of the agenda. So we'll do introductions. We're going to hear from both Andy and Rob. We'll have a nice panel discussion. And really, I think what most people want to hear is what are some other ways that other distributors are using Pulsa? How does it benefit the customer? What are some solutions that are available? And to really help promote awareness in this space of solutions outside of just bulk, because a lot of times when people say, well, are you using Pulsa for medical? It's like, well, yeah, I have Pulsa on all my bulk tanks, and some of my hospitals are obviously on Pulsa. So we just really want to talk about what other distributors are doing, and then talk about the benefits for both you as a distributor and also the end user themselves. So I'm going to talk a lot less now. So why don't we kick it off too? I'll do introductions. So I have Andy Castiglione, good solid Italian, and I also have Rob Gentile from Dailey Resources. So I'm just going to go to my left. Andy, if you can kind of just give us a background of WestAir, kind of a little bit about your organization, and then if you can share a little bit of commentary on how did the relationship start with Pulsa, and like where were you at before and where are you guys at with Pulsa today? So if you can kind of give us some color commentary, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you very much for having us.
Yeah.
So my name is Andy Castiglione. I've been with WestAir for going on about 15 years. WestAir is a regional gas distributor. Majority of our focus is here in California. We stretch all the way from San Diego and the border of Tijuana all the way up to Richmond, California, up in the Bay Area. And then we also stretch out into parts of Arizona and also the Dallas-Fort Worth area of Texas. We have been in business for about 54 years. My brother and I are the third generation in the family business. Our grandfather started it with our grandma on just a little bit of money and this desire to provide excellent customer service, or I should say better customer service than what the majors at the time were providing. And, fast forward 54 years, we're still have the same philosophy, right? We want to provide that superior customer service experience while providing, essentially the same products that the majors do. We started with Pulsa, I want to say about 3 or 4 years ago. Pulsa was not our first telemetry provider. We started with Chart when Microbulk first came out, which was back in I think the 90s. And, we've always used it for bulk and microbulk applications. But when Pulsa and a couple other packaged gas telemetry providers came to market, we were very curious because it worked really well for microbulk and bulk. And we knew that it would work for packaged gases, but, we wanted to test it out. So we kind of did an easy, soft entry into packaged gas telemetry, which has ultimately put us in a position where we've got it on virtually all of our beverage bulk systems. We've got it on 6-packs, 15-packs, liquid cylinders, single cylinders. We've got a whole wide array of customers with various applications that are currently using it today, which I'll dive into a little bit deeper later in this discussion.
Thanks so much, Rob. Same question. If you can kind of give us some background for Dailey Resources, as well as that relationship with Pulsa, what got you intrigued in the technology, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so I've been with Dailey Resources pretty much my whole life. The owner, Tom Dailey Sr., his grandson, Tom Dailey, we grew up together our whole lives. We've been together since kindergarten. So we've really had a run for it together, and just always worked here and fell in love with gas because gas is going nowhere. So you got to run gas on the ground, and that's what I love about it. And we're more into medical, and I like to focus on more of hospitals and stuff like that, as to where that's what I grew up in, as more of the way to go in the gas industry for us. We're
Mhm.
located just in the northeastern region of Pennsylvania, so we're not as big as Andy over there, but we try our best, and we're just another small company taking on the majors. And the way that I got into Pulsa was during COVID. I saw a big spike in people not reading their gases because they didn't have enough employees because they couldn't come into the office. So
Interesting.
during that time, that's when I said, all right, this will be an easy sell. Let's put a sensor on your tank. That's one less employee that you have to have there. And ever since that, it just took off, and we've been running with it ever since.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you. So I guess to go back to Andy, especially when we talk about you've been using telemetry for a long time when it came to your bulk, and you said, well, hey, I know that this is going to work for our packaged gases. If you can kind of speak a little bit about that. So what are some challenges, I guess, to introducing telemetry to these type of customers? If we're talking about, anything from a doer, what you said, a 6-pack, a 12-pack, a manifold, like what are some challenges getting telemetry into those type of customers, and what have you learned kind of along the way?
Yeah. So there's a couple different challenges. Really, the big one is change, right?
Mhm.
Our customers, just the humans' nature is to resist change and stick with what we know. Sometimes we can be called, creatures of habit. However, when you look at the benefits of having telemetry installed and the challenges associated with getting it out there, the benefits really outweigh the challenges. So for me, it was like, okay, how do we knock down the hurdles? How do we knock down these challenges that exist? And really, it's in the communication, right? It's in the message to the customer. How do they perceive telemetry benefiting them, right? Rather than it's them personally or their company. So one of the biggest challenges was how do we roll this out to our salespeople? Sometimes I think our salespeople are our biggest challenge, whether it's pushing telemetry or pushing a price increase, right? That's very much needed just to cover our costs. So educating our salespeople is definitely one of the biggest challenges. The
Mhm.
next biggest challenge is the installation. The technology, the hardware is pretty straightforward, whether you're working with a high pressure sensor, a pressure differential sensor, a weight scale, or a Pulsa link. The technology itself, the hardware, is really easy to use and install,
Mhm.
but it does take a technician to go out there at the customer site in most cases to install it. And we don't have extra bodies, or we try to not have extra bodies just sitting around twiddling their thumbs. So when you talk about the installation, it could take 2 hours per location. Then you got travel time there, and then you have travel time to your next place. So we kind of look at it; it's anywhere from 2 to 4 hours per install, even if we're just doing one simple sensor. So having the manpower and the technicians trained to efficiently go out and install the sensors was definitely an operational challenge.
Mhm.
Um, and then setting up the software. So how once we have the data, how are we going to use it? And there's a lot
Mhm.
of different ways to utilize the data. And my biggest fear was we're going to go and have all this wonderful data available and not utilize it at all, right? Or utilize it wrong or bad. So training our internal folks on how to set the sensors up, how to set alerts up, and then what we were going to do with the data was the third challenge. But it really came down to just communication, education, and then constant reinforcement. Once we had our first batch of sensors out there, we couldn't just leave those alone. We had to continue to educate ourselves and train our people to stay on top of it. And Pulse has been very proactive with coming to us with new offerings and new features with the software.
Mhm.
So just making sure that we're staying up on top of those and utilizing it to the best of our ability would be the last challenge.
Gotcha. And I forgot to mention when we did the agenda, at the end of the call, we'll have some new resources specifically for promoting Pulsa for these type of customers, whether that be a vet, whether that be a lab, or whether that be a hospital setting. we have some resources to help out with that. So I am curious, and we could definitely dive into that a little bit more, what you're doing to empower your sales reps. So I guess, Rob, same question. What are the challenges in just getting telemetry into these particular types of customers? You know, the medical, packaged gas, like what are the challenges in the Northeast for you?
As Andy said, people hate change, and that's never going to go away because people just hate it. And when there's new technology out there, it's very hard for the older generation to want to do that because they've been doing something the same way for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And that is one of the biggest problems to overcome, is trying to explain to them, well, here's the numbers, let's show you the data. And after you show them the data, you could break it down and say, well, is it worth it or is it not? One of my biggest selling points is you're willing to pay for that $15 Amazon subscription, I bet. Why not do it with Pulsa and technology and keep your gases under control and stay away from those emergency fees and stuff like that?
Gotcha. Great. So, and I know Andy, you brought it up about you're just and Rob too. We're trying to get business from our competitors. We're trying to do a better job servicing them. How are you currently differentiating right now? Whether that's with telemetry, making that part of the total offering. How are you differentiating as a distributor against some of your competitors, in particular the majors?
You know, it just comes down to service. We think of ourselves as the premier service provider in California, Arizona, and Texas. So the telemetry offering is like another layer, right, of that service offering, of that superior offering. The majors and other independents, they have access to the technology. It's a lot harder for a really, really big company to implement a technology like packaged gas telemetry. So we believe that eventually everybody's going to be utilizing it. You know, when you look at the cost, the cost is almost nothing. We think of it as $1 a day per sensor. To our
Mhm.
customers, that's nothing, right? To us, it's not a lot, but to our customers, when you look at their overall cost stack is required to run their business, $1 a day does not move the needle up or down. It's really irrelevant. So it's not a cost factor. It's
Mhm.
more of just, adoption, right? And utilization and best practices moving forward. So we're just utilizing it to pick up new business, right? It's something different. It's a differentiator. Even if we just talk about it in our sales approach, immediately when you talk about packaged gas telemetry and the ability to remotely monitor a single cylinder or a liquid cylinder, that catches attention, right? Because nobody has really heard of it before, even though the technology's been around on the bulk and micro bulk side. And really the technology hasn't changed much over the last couple of decades. It's just become more affordable and more accessible, I should say, to get our hands on and to get it ultimately out in the field. It's been pretty easy to differentiate ourselves and just show something different. And it really can't hurt. You know, if you think about it, we're not selling it as a bulletproof solution to completely eliminate runouts or completely eliminate the potential of runouts. It's just an additional layer of assurance that we have an extra set of eyes on that particular container, and then we have the data available should something go wrong or should there be a question about usage. We've now have additional data to back up whatever our recommended solution is going to be. So I'd say
Mhm.
that's been the biggest selling feature for us, and the way that we've gotten it now is we just talk about it with our customers and we explain how it works. And in certain business segments, such as beverage bulk, we're just making it's mandatory, right? It's not optional. We're putting it on every system, and we're proving to our customers that it works and that it's a value to them and it's a value to us. It's mutually beneficial.
That's awesome. And I'm definitely going to dive into a little bit more about the existing versus the new customer. Rob, similar question, and I guess was when it comes to that too, if we break it down to where it's like $1 a day, how sensitive are they to that versus just well, I can't be down. This is a moneymaker for me. I can't not have this up and running, or this is a, I need
So
to.
yes, when that's a great question as to when someone's in surgery or something like that, and they're using nitrogen to power their drills, and that nitrogen runs out, and they start pointing the finger at us as to you gave us an empty tank. Now I have the data, the research to prove to them that I didn't run you out. Your people left your tanks open all night, and you came in the morning, and that is what happened. And with doctors, they're not easy to talk to, as we all know. But after you put the data in front of them and show them that we're not responsible, the data doesn't lie, they kind of are like, well, this is definitely worth it. And whatever it costs, sign us up.
Gotcha. That's great. That's great to hear. And I guess interesting. So Andy, you mentioned, on a new customer, that's a differentiator. And I think you were saying the other day that you even have your competitors come to you and it's like, hey, what is this like telemetry? Like, what are you guys offering too? And it's like, man, like, I wish I can offer that, but like, we have all this like red tape. I guess how do you approach a new customer where we said, this is part of our offering. This is really what separates WestAir from our competitors. And then how is that nuance to go to an existing customer, an established account, and say, hey, here is something else that can better, that can help us better service you. But even more importantly, too, like on their end, for them to have an extra set of eyes on it as well. So how do we differentiate that approach between getting this to an existing customer versus a new customer?
Yeah, the sales tactics, if you will, are essentially the same, right? We're selling the same features and benefits, whether it's an existing WestAir customer or a brand new customer that's never used gas before,
Mhm.
or a potential brand new customer to WestAir that's currently using an incumbent supplier. So the features and the benefits are the same. We go in with a new prospect. In a lot of the cases, they're using an incumbent supplier.
Mhm.
We're working on brand recognition and getting our name out there, and are doing a better job getting customers right out of the gate as they're just starting up their businesses. But the majors have been around in California for a long time. They've got a lot of market share. So in most of our cases, they're already used to using somebody else, right? And they
Mhm.
already have some sort of pain or preconceived notion of our industry being poor service providers. So we're coming in, identifying the pain, right? What is the incumbent supplier not doing well, or what could they be doing better? And we address those things. One of the biggest complaints we hear is, hey, our deliveries don't come on time. We order on a Monday, and sometimes we'll get it, on Tuesday or Wednesday. Sometimes it takes, Thursday, Friday, or sometimes we've got to wait an entire week to get that delivery. And in a lot of cases, they just can't wait that long. So what we show them is, hey, if you have telemetry on there, now you don't have to go to that cylinder, or let's say that liquid cylinder, and look at that level every day, right? Now you can take a little bit of a more of a backseat, relaxed approach. You can check it remotely. You can still check it every day. You can check it every 3 minutes if you want to and get a live update. But you can relax a little bit and set up alerts, and those alerts are going to go off at whatever percentage or whatever level you want them to. 20% full, 30% full, 50% full, whatever's correct, or whatever they feel comfortable with for their process.
Mhm.
And know that you're going to get that alert, and you're not going to, potentially miss checking a gauge or misreading a gauge on site when, if you go or your technician's going to check the levels. So we offer that right out of the gate for the new prospects. Now, for our existing customers, we go to them and we say, look, how is our service? How are we doing for you? What could we be doing better? What do you like about us, right? And then what could we be doing better?
Mhm.
And if it's nothing, we're always trying to introduce things that we think could be of value. So it's the same process. It's like, hey, are you frustrated with, the levels, understanding the levels or reading the levels on your liquid cylinders? We've got this digital gauge, so that's like, a benefit. And then we have this thing called the Pulsa link that we can connect to that digital gauge, and you can remotely monitor your doer. Would that be of interest to you? Would that be beneficial? And then we talk more about it. Normally the answer is like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like, how does it work? And we go into how it works. And then we go into the benefits and like just basically like how do the alerts work. And they just kind of seem to, either have a lot of interest, or in some cases they don't have a lot of interest. But even if they don't have a lot of interest, we'll put it on like a trial, right? Hey, if you're a little skeptical about how it works or if it's going to work for you, let's just try it for 3 months. We'll come out, there's no charge up front. We'll install the link or install the sensor, whatever it is. You guys try it for free for 3 months. And after 3 months, we'll check back with you. If you like it, we'll leave it. If you absolutely don't like it or it's causing problems in your business, we'll take it off. And I mean, you guys know the outcome there. Once you get it on, they're going to love the software. They're going to love the alerts feature, and they just leave it. So we can take in my opinion, a more of a direct sales approach and mandate it for certain package types. But we've decided, you know what, let's work with the customers. Let's get their buy-in, because that's ultimately what we want. We want them to buy in on the products and services that we're offering for the long haul. And so we've taken kind of a softer approach with most. But once we get the sensor out there, they get their hands on the technology, whether they want access to the software or not. We leave it up to them. But if we've got our eyes on it, we feel like it's a win-win for both parties every time.
That's awesome. And then I'll definitely ask Rob that follow-up question too, because customers are curious too, like what other distributors do, whether or not they actually share the data. So I will dive into that a little bit more too when we talk about what solutions specifically you're using with Pulsa. So going back, I guess, to Rob, same question. So you definitely had some interesting stories. You're like, well, when this happened, I said, we can't be doing this emergency delivery. They're getting Pulsa. So kind of walk us through your thought process, your mindset going into adding Pulsa to a new customer versus adding it to an existing customer. So like, what does that process look like?
So the existing customer is, soon as they have an emergency call and they see that larger number that comes across their invoice, mostly they usually call and they're not happy. But after you say, well, let's prove this, that it's not our fault once again, as to let me put you on telemetry and let's see if this is going to help solve the problem. And that is one of the big problems that with labs is the turnover rate of having people, new employees coming in and out. Some people don't know whose job it is to watch the tank. So when it comes down to that crucial hour and they need to test something and they get over there and they just don't have any gas and they're starting to point fingers, and then ultimately it comes back and they say, well, we got an empty tank. I'm going to say, here's the data and this is why you should be on Pulsa telemetry. It pretty much sells itself at that point. Now, as to going into new customers, Andy said, you go in, you say, let's try this, let me know, let's see if it works. And at the end of the day, 100 out of 100 with the alerts, and you show them that this is what you're really using the product and how much you should actually be paying for, then they take a better look at it. And that's more of an easier sell because you have data to back it up. Trust is a huge thing, as we all know. So when you have trust and then you have proof, there's no way to stop it. And that is one of the big things going against majors, is proving to them that you care and that you are also want to watch it. And I usually tell the customer that you don't need to watch it. Soon as this is on me, we're going to watch it. And soon as something goes wrong, if we don't react, then call. But every time you get that alert, you're there, you show up, and you prove to them that it's worth it every time. And I just can't get enough out of it. I love it, and just can't wait for more and more updates.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I guess that's a really nice way of saying, and again, it's never a fun conversation with your sales reps too, when we have that emergency delivery fee conversation. So if we can avoid that's always good too, because you always feel like you want to do good on your customer. And again, this is me in the Northeast. They want to blame it on you naturally. And again, people are naturally a little bit more skeptical here. So I get that. So yeah,
And
that's
if we have an emergency delivery fee, will talk to them, or I will talk to them and say, let's put Pulsa on, let's get you on this service. We'll
yep,
waive your emergency fee and let's get you on it so this doesn't happen again. We also go that way too. So, because it helps operations, so we don't have to make the emergency delivery, but we're able to get Pulse on right away as well. So it's kind of a win-win and recurring rent on that anyways.
that's great. That's great to hear. Yeah, thanks. And Adam, just for clarity, you're also with WestAir, correct?
No, I'm with General Distributing.
Oh, general distributing. Great. All right, good. I love it, man. I love it. Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. Now kind of want to get into, and I'm probably a lot of customers are really interested because they're like, oh, I like Pulse. I switched over all my bulk from, X competitor to you guys. I guess hardware wise, how are you implementing Pulsa right now? And specifically when we talk about those medical and lab customers. So like what are you using more so? You find more success by adding high pressure on the manifolds, light scales, and it looks like we have both Rob and Andy highlighted. So I'll just again same thing. I'll start with Andy and then I'll obviously end with Rob. So Andy, what products are you using from Pulsa right now? Like what do you guys use the most?
Yeah, so here in California, we have a lot of life sciences, biotech, pharmaceutical, medical device. I mean, there's so much happening in the UC school system. We've got USD, a ton of SDSU, USD, UCLA. I mean, the list goes on, USC, and then a bunch of smaller community colleges as well that are really heavy in research and development for the life science community. So the big movers there obviously are liquid nitrogen for cell preservation, and then CO2 for cell incubation. So if you look at dewars, we've got a lot of 230-liter dewars out there. About 12 years ago, we adopted the digital gauge, the C stick from Rotarex, and so we have a pretty good sized population of dewars that have that C stick on them. And about 6 months ago, we decided that we were going to roll that digital gauge out across our entire dewar fleet. So that's in progress now. But the reason that we did that is because we wanted to standardize the gauge. We had a few different models, right, over the decade of use, and they had different connections for the Pulsa Link. And so our experience with the Pulsa Link is these applications, especially in the life science community or industry, they're high value, right? So if you're talking about like cells, right, and the cells that are frozen by the liquid nitrogen, it's really, really imperative that those remain frozen and are not lost. So that's probably the biggest use case in the life science space is liquid cylinders, predominantly liquid nitrogen. So we got the C-stick on there and then the Pulsa Link, and that seems to work really, really well. Now, if you go over to CO2 cylinders, that gets a little bit trickier. You can go with a high pressure sensor, but all of us in the gas industry know that those CO2 cylinders are going to remain around, call it 800 or 850 psi until the liquid is gone in that cylinder. And then the vapor headspace depletes fairly quickly in terms of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So you can do it that way, and especially if you have it on a switchover manifold and you're just trying to know if the cylinder is empty or full. And if you've got time, if you've got a left bank and a right bank to work off of each other, the high pressure sensor works just fine. But you can also use the Pulsa scale. So we've used the 1x1s, we've used the 2x2 industrial scales. We've even used 3x3 scales for our liquid cylinders before the Pulsa Link came out. A little bit of a pain moving those liquid cylinders up onto the scale. But when you look at weight is a very sure way of knowing contents in a container. You just take the tare weight of the container, and then whatever in addition to that is how much product you've got in that container. So we do it both ways. Again, we prefer if it's a critical application to have backup supply. So we have a lot of automatic switchover manifolds in the field. And if that's the case, the high pressure sensor is really easy to put on there. I will mention one of the challenges with the scales, just so everybody is aware, and it's a no-brainer when you really think about it, is the tare weight of the cylinders can vary, right? So depending on when your cylinder was manufactured, who was manufactured by, the thickness of the walls, that cylinder tare weight can vary. And that can make it a little bit difficult when you're switching cylinders out onto the scale, because you essentially have to calibrate the scale each time to know the true tare weight. So we prefer the high pressure sensor. Anytime that we can put that on, get it on a switchover manifold, have that backup supply there, and plenty of it, right? Like a week's worth or 2 weeks worth. The more storage, the better. But those are the two very popular sensors that we're currently utilizing in the life science space.
Gotcha. Quick follow-up question to that, especially because I have some customers right now, and I'm sure other distributors are thinking about this too. Uh, I have this many mobile doers. Was it worthwhile, or I guess it must have been if you're going through the process of converting that fleet? Like, what would be your advice to someone if it's like, well, I have 300 liquid nitrogen cans. Does this make sense for me to add that? Does it actually make sense for me to add that, especially when, and again, and again, I'm just being real world. A lot of times they'll put it on that customer to tell them when they need to swap it. And I've just seen a little bit of a pain point from that end user saying, well, I don't know whether or not this gauge is really good. And I've called you thinking I was out and I wasn't out, and then vice versa. I thought I was good and then I was not. So what was that thought process behind converting some of those existing doers to telemetry ready doers?
Yeah, I can't speak for every company, right, in the United States. All of us independents are all different. We service different markets. We run our businesses different ways,
Mhm,
and we're all obviously focused on customer service, right? But
mhm,
there's some different variables that we need to take into consideration, and cost is one of them. These gauges, they're not free, right? The C-stick is not free. The labor to install it is not free. We're big believers in it. We have a lot of experience with the digital gauges, and we've been through almost all of the different generations of them.
mhm,
And when Rotarex came out with their C-stick light gauge,
mhm,
it's a very economical gauge. It's the lowest price digital gauge that we've seen, and it also seems to be the most robust in terms of design and functionality. It's maybe, if you want to call it, one of the dumber of the gauges. It's a smart gauge. It's still a digital gauge, but it has less bells and whistles on it, so less things to go wrong. So when
mhm.
that came out about, I want to say, oh, it's coming up on a year ago, we got
Yep.
really excited because it met our price point. It met our kind of robustness factor that we were looking for. And since we've deployed them, zero issues with the gauge. So that really helps kind of push us over the edge and make the decision to put them on all of our containers. And from a sales standpoint, yes, there is an additional cost, but it wasn't a big cost. And so we figured if we're really going to get a lot of pushback, we're going to try and get a premium for these in the market because they demand, they should, you should pay a premium to have that premium technology on there. But in the event that a customer really just was price point focused and doesn't want to pay for it, we can still kind of work the economics out to make it make sense to have these on all of our fleet. We're big on cylinder utilization from an operations standpoint. So we want to have the majority, call it 70% or more of our cylinder fleet, whether it's liquid cylinders or high pressure cylinders, out
Mhm,
at our customers generating rent, working in the field, while the remaining, call it 30%, is with us, whether it's on our trucks or on our docks, being filled or serviced for maintenance.
mhm.
So we can get a better cylinder utilization rate if our packages are standardized. So that was another key factor that we kind of thought about and considered when making the move to put the digital gauges on all of our containers. Now, the next step is, can we get a Pulsa link on every one of those containers? And that's getting out a little bit further into the weeds of like how that would work when the sensor goes from customer to customer and
Mhm.
communicates with the communication boxes. But that's where our minds are already thinking, like, how can we get remote monitoring on every one of these containers now that they're essentially Pulsa link ready with the C-stick gauge?
That's awesome. Thank you, Neil. We can kind of talk a little bit more about how that works and some of the nuts and bolts with the mobile assets and what some other customers do for that. Rob, same question. Use cases specifically, and what hardware are you using right now with Pulse? So I know you mentioned dental offices, surgery centers. Like, what products are you using, and what are those type of customers where you're using them?
So yes, I like the high pressure sensor. That is my favorite to use right now,
Okay.
especially when it comes to a dentist or a surgery center. I love to put it on there so then the customer doesn't have to worry or rely on another employee to call in and reorder. We just show up, we set the alerts, you show up when it gets low enough, and a lot of the time these dentists and doctors, they can't believe that it actually happened, that technology is changing the game like it is. So especially in dentistry, with them using nitrous and oxygen, we use the scales on the nitrous end, and we use the high pressure sensor on the oxygen end. And as it has the manifold on there, as one changes over, that's when we show up the next day and switch it out. And the same thing for nitrous. That's one of our favorite ways to do it.
That's great. And I guess follow-up question to that too. So I guess when we're talking about separating ourselves from our competitors, are your customers interested in anything outside normal level and pressure? Are they coming to you saying, hey, I monitor my pH, or you might have a place that hey, I want to look at flow as well, or temperature? Like, does that come up? Is that
Yes,
something
it does, as into you could prove to the customer that, alrighty, out of one tank of oxygen, I am going to get this many patients if I use it correctly. And the same on the nitrous end, when you break down that data, as we all know, nitrous is very expensive. So when you break down that data and prove to them that, hey, your people are actually leaving the tank on overnight, and this is just dollars going into the air. You put that in front of a doctor or a surgeon, they are all over it.
That's awesome. That's obviously really good to hear. And I guess, Andy, similar, you brought it up earlier. So how do you make the decision? And then same question back to Rob. It sounds like you opt to give the customer the option, say, you can look at the data. Are you just promoting that to them? Is that like it depends on the customer type. So how do we decide, whether or not that customer sees the data, and what do customers think if you are sharing it with them when they can look at the dashboard? So what is that experience like?
Yeah, we do have some customers that want access to the data, and it's super easy to give them access to. What they do with it is up to them. We want to control, though, the alerts, so we don't allow them to tell us when the alerts are going to happen. We talk to them about it, and we explain to them, hey, these are how the alerts are going to set up. This is how the reordering is going to be worked out. But we do give them access to the data. We don't get into it a whole lot with them unless there's a challenge, or there's a question that they have, and they come back and say, hey, we're looking at the data, and this doesn't make sense. Can you explain it to us? Then we'll start diving into it with them. But for us, we're really focused on eliminating runouts. We don't want runouts to happen, and we want to have a very efficient distribution model. So for many of us distributors, our biggest expense is distribution. Aside from people, right? The distribution expense is very, very high, especially for us here in California. The fuel rates, the cost of drivers, the wear and tear on the rigs, it just all of that makes the delivery very expensive. So the way we sell it to the customers is, hey, if we have access to your levels and we can eliminate 1 or 2 deliveries a year, that right there is going to pay for the technology. And then I do appreciate what Rob brought up earlier, and I failed to mention it when we're selling to the customers, especially existing customers. If a customer's ever experienced a run out and has had to pay for an emergency delivery or a same day delivery, those do come at a premium. We do charge for those, and they're expensive. So if they've experienced just one of those in a year, in a 12-month period, that one experience will pay for the technology, plus or minus, however you want to look at it, that inconvenience factor. And that inconvenience factor can be weighed out a whole bunch of different ways. But, and then that's up to the customer and their application and what they're using the gas for. But if they've just experienced one of them in a year, or they can save on 2 deliveries a year, the technology pays for itself. And then everything beyond that is a return on the investment. So when we look at it that way, for us, we're reducing our cost to serve, which we can then pass along to the customer and they benefit from. Again, it goes to that like mutual beneficial relationship with the technology.
That's awesome. Rob, yeah, same question. So it sounds like are you just looking at the data and saying, hey, this is what I found? Are you actively sharing that with that end user? Like, how do you approach it?
So I do both options. As I said before, is if they want to see it on their own and they could look at it, I have no problem sharing with them, because proof is honesty, and that's what you want to stand behind is, hey, this is what's going on. And I back with Pulsa all the time because the technology is amazing. And from a younger generation standpoint, we as younger individuals are all about technology, as we all know. That's where the world is going. So when you start showing and proving to them that this is the way the world is going, technology, we're one step ahead. They really like to see the data, but then you have the older generation who says, I just don't want to run out. You just handle it, and I don't care what it looks like, but don't let me run out.
Got
And
it.
that's the way that I see it.
That's great. So it sounds like it's kind of a mix then. So some of it is the benefit for you. You're making sure you have eyes on it. That's separating you. But there's also situations where you said they did not have the manpower or they turned over staff where having this extra data is really a benefit for them when they need to change it over and all that good stuff. Because when it comes to bulk telemetry, that's almost 100% on the distributor, and that's more peace of mind. When it comes to some of these packaged gases, some of it does fall on the end user and really like what they need to do. So having this as another like tool in the toolbox. So I definitely want to leave some time for some actual Q&A at the end. Just real quick in terms of like trends, and then we'll dive into some of the new resources we have that can empower your sales reps as well as the other people on the call here. What do you kind of see as like a new like emerging market? Like I know, cryotherapy is kind of a thing I'm starting to hear from other distributors. Like what are some other maybe growing markets that just could be an opportunity, not just for the distributor, but obviously for you to add telemetry to those customers? Like what are some other emerging markets, I guess? I'll start with you, Andy, again.
Yeah. So we always look at the emerging markets. Like many, we're oftentimes we're optimistic, but we're also pessimistic, right? And when we look at a new customer, there's a significant investment typically, right, that has to happen in order to service that customer. We got to buy cylinders, we got to buy liquid cylinders, we got to buy cylinder baskets, we got to have trucks and drivers to get the stuff out there. So when emerging markets like cryotherapy or agriculture, cannabis in California had its moment where it was booming to some,
Mhm.
we like to be in the forefront, but we're always looking at it a little bit cautiously. So as far as emerging markets, we do have cryotherapy, we do have cannabis cultivation and extraction. Um, Food is a big one in California, so there's been a lot of buzz around food. In fact, we just picked up a new customer about 6 months ago, and they're now able to grow meat from cells. So, and as opposed to slaughtering a chicken or killing a fish, they're able to actually take that fish cell and grow meat from it, and it's edible, right? It's like a thing now, artificially produced meats. So we've got a big focus on food. We still have a big focus on life sciences. Metal fabrication, we haven't lost touch with. That's still a huge industry for us here, whether it's Navy ships or aerospace manufacturing. So I'd say we're probably a little bit more true to like the core industries or the core applications that have been around for decades. And like Rob said, we don't see our products and services being displaced at any point, right? Whether for a welding application or food preservation application, like gas is going to continue to be used. So we stay very focused on those. And we're really not application focused with the utilization of Pulsa. We're more trying to understand the customer's requirements and how we can utilize the technology to provide them a superior customer service experience. And no matter what the application is, every time it provides a superior customer service application, as long as we're utilizing the data and setting up the alerts correctly. It's a win-win every time.
Awesome. Rob, same question. So basically what's new in the Northeast? Like what
So
are
what I see in the Northeast, in this lovely Northeast we have here, is cryotherapy. Because now, no matter what, any person is taking, all these people are doing cold plunges. That just took off. And I already see it as the next step, as hopefully for us gas guys, is okay, let's see if cryotherapy is one step better. And I could see them popping up here and there, but it's not at that rate we want. But with the way that the technology and people are seeing that cooling down your body to such a temperature is doing the trick to help with certain body parts in your mental health and all that stuff. I see that eventually taking a big step for the gas industry.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Interesting. And I guess this is just a quick follow-up question. For those new cryotherapy people, what % of them understand their equipment and blame it on you?
So that's a great question. Most people have no idea what they're getting themselves into. So then that falls back on a service end, as so we need to have the knowledge to be able to show the customer, well, I did this with the other customer and it's been working great, as
Yep.
to we could break down how many people you could put in a cryotherapy for, say, 3 minutes. We start with the tank, and then we could break down the numbers and actually get the rate, and so then they know what they have to charge.
That's awesome. Megan, if you could pull up, and while Megan's doing that, can you pull up the actual slide and kind of talk through some of the, and we'll talk through some of the new sell-through materials that we have for the medical and spec side. Quick question, I guess, because you mentioned it. Well, I can see exactly what you're doing to the minute. Same thing for Andy and Rob. I'll start with Andy again. You mentioned their telemetry's been around for a while. There's other telemetry companies. What makes you confident in going with Pulsa over other providers, or what do you like that we do that maybe industry standard just doesn't do?
Yeah, so we hold a very high standard for ourselves in terms of service to our customers. However, at the same time, we expect the same of our vendors, and so the service has been the best, right, through Pulsa. And what got us hooked on the service, or started with the service, was the hardware. The hardware offering between the high pressure sensor, the DP sensor, the link, and the scales. Those are the 4 sensors that we utilize the most. Those cover 99% of our customers' applications, or the types of packages that we have out in the field. So that was ultimately what got us onto Pulsa. And then what's keeping us on, aside from the good service, is the software, right? And you guys have been spending a lot of time developing the software, honing in the software, and improving it, and looking for different ways to present the data, different features to help us analyze the data and manage it. And so I think that that's been really critical because this is new to us. Like the idea of the quantity of sensors, the diversity of sensors, and how we manage that data. It's a lot, right? And we don't have full-time specialists that just dive into this. Maybe one day we'll get there. But right now we have these generalists, customer service associates and managers and then logistics teams, right, that are getting the data, and they need to know very quickly and very easily what to do with it and how to react to the data that they're getting. So the software has been excellent in terms of evolution, and I understand you guys have more things coming up. So we'll just kind of continue to stay tuned and utilize the features as they become available.
Awesome. Rob, same question real quick.
So my biggest thing was when I found out that you guys have an app, and I was able to have my cell phone, and no matter where I was at, I was able to check each and every customer. That is very big from an operation standpoint, and being able to have those alerts to other people, such as the sales rep that customer belongs to. So that saves a phone call from them calling me, yelling at me, why is this happening? Well, everybody sees what's going on. And even now with the notifications of when something goes wrong with the system, that is something that has become very, very big for me as using that. So it's the app, for the way technology is. If anything you could have at your fingertips, is way better than have it on paper in my eyes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I'll let Megan go back to some of the resources. So real quick, if you guys go to, and we're going to share the link to download this actual sell-through kit. I'll just run through what's included in this new sell-through kit. So first off, when you download the kit, it will have basically like a getting started guide, and it runs through each and every different asset. So first off, we start in a medical setting. So you can see it's got a picture of somebody in a hospital setting. And again, a lot of times customers will ask, hey, do you have something that I can just explain Pulsa really quick to my customers? So basically, that's a nice 4-page flyer, and it's really targeted toward that type of demographic. Same thing for like a lab or life sciences. And again, then you can not only just and then you can not only just obviously speak to it, but you can kind of show them on paper, what that looks like. So here's the technology that we would use. We're going to put in a pressure sensor here, put a pressure sensor there. It connects with the gateway. Again, you're gonna get real-time readings, all that good stuff. And then same thing, and again, I just love it because I told Megan, I was like, that's a really cute dog. We definitely have to have that. I definitely want to show that off. And then likewise, we have included an educational article. It's just a nice, 7 things to know about telemetry that you can share with the customers, and everything that we've done, we've made it so that way you can really quickly and easily customize it to yourself. So that way your sales rep can take this, go put their name, put their logo, put their number on that. And then in addition to that, we've added some other assets that you can add to your social media too. So you can add that to your email signature. You can add that to whatever you have on your website, especially as you guys are talking about. It's interesting. Whenever I look up Dailey, the first thing that comes up, and that's why when we talked about discussing medical and lab telemetry, medical gas. A lot of times it's secondary from other distributors. It's basically the first thing that you're talking about. So that'd be another tool in your toolbox to help you out with that. So Megan, do you have a link to the do you have a link to where to download that? It should be, I think, pulsasensors.com. There we go. Yep. So it's pulsasensors.com /en-cell-med. So you go there, put in your email address, and then you'll be able to download all the assets. If you need help customizing some things, let us know. But we've been hearing from our customers more and more. I want more things that can empower my sales reps, and that can really empower. Yeah, like right here, we can see what that asset looks like. Talking about Pulsa, showing the different use cases. Here we have like some liquid cylinders, some liquid nitrogen. And again, just talking about just really simply how that can benefit the customer. And there you can see at the bottom, we can add your name, telephone number, logo, print those off. So I'll leave it up to some Q&A while I have some really capable people on who can obviously answer questions. So I guess I'll kind of open that up for everybody. Anybody who's on, do you have any questions for Andy or Rob, or do you have any questions for us?
I think everyone can unmute themselves.
Yeah.
So if you're talking, you might be on mute. Just hit in the lower left, there's a microphone icon. If you can just tap that. Don't be shy.
I kind of figured we just answered all the questions in the webinar itself.
You guys were good. You guys were definitely thorough. I think hearing in the dental offices, hearing about some of the high pressure uses, like having that has been really helpful. Some other use cases, and I didn't ask you this question. Do you use our light scales for any kind of smaller, and for anything like smaller, like smaller liquid nitrogen or anything? Because I had a customer, they mentioned, well, I'd like to use your light scale. I have a customer, they have some really expensive, I think, horse or cow embryos or something like that. They use that for research, or they ship it off to Saudi Arabia. I'm not exactly sure. Do you guys use light scales for anything like that too?
We use the light scales. We prefer the industrial scales. For us, they just seem to last longer. We're really rough on our equipment, and putting heavy cylinders on there, getting them on and off is a little bit of a challenge. So we prefer anytime we can go to the 2-foot by 2-foot scale. The industrial is our preference. However, we do have a good amount of just single 50-pound CO2 cylinders, or as Rob mentioned, nitrous oxide tanks on the 1-foot by 1-foot light scales. But most of what we're monitoring right now is gas cylinders and liquid cylinders. So in those cases, we do prefer to use the industrial scales anytime we can fit them.
Gotcha. And then Rob, are you using light scales? Are you using any Pulsa technology for something maybe different that a customer might not normally think of, or even going back to like welding wire or something like that?
So that is also, welding wire is a perfect example for customers not to run out. Is inventory. That is one of the good reasons to use it. In some cases, we will use it. One of the things I would like to say is if we could get that 1-by-1 scale a little more industrial, I think the sales could start to push a little better.
Gotcha. Fair, fair. And then actually, does anybody have any other questions? Because I did want to touch a little bit on, you mentioned about using the Pulsa link in mobile assets. Does anybody have any questions who's listening right now?
Or anything to add, like Adam did earlier. I see this as just like a industry sharing best practices opportunity.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you could share it on LinkedIn. If you don't think of it now.
That's awesome. So I guess real quick, Andy, you had mentioned about using, you have a whole fleet now of cans that have the C-stick light or have some kind of telemetry ready gauge, and kind of marrying that up with the customers right now. So how are you managing that right now? Or do you have any questions while you actually have, because I also have Dave on the line too, how other customers utilize that right now?
Yeah, right now we have the Pulsa link connecting to the Rotor X gauge. So we have the SGB2 style in the field, and then we have the new light style digital gauge from Rotor X.
Yep.
Like I said, we are converting our entire fleet to the light style, so it's all going to have the same fitting. But right now, what we do is we just leave the link on site. So we don't like connect it or secure it to the liquid cylinder itself. We just simply plug it in, and then we just kind of rest it on top. Normally, once it's plugged in, our customers aren't moving the containers around, so we haven't had any issues of the link becoming disconnected or dropping off, breaking. Normally, once the link is connected, the container's in use, and our drivers do most of that connecting, so they make sure it's a good snug fit. So that's how we're currently doing it. We just leave the link at the customer site and just change it from doer to doer as the empties and fulls rotate out. So
Gotcha.
pretty basic. It works for us. A little bit of labor, but we really don't have any drivers. My one concern was drivers were going to forget and, to switch it out and take it off the empty. But, so far, knock on wood, the drivers have been great. We do put a little note on the shipper that highlights, hey, this has got a link on there. Don't forget to switch the link. And then we put a little sign on the container as well. We just hang it off of the ring of the doer. And it just says, hey, attention WestAir driver. Don't forget to switch out the Pulsa link. Super basic, but sometimes the most basic solutions are the best solutions. So we found that that's worked the best for us.
I love it. Yeah, and that works. So we have customers who are doing exactly that, and they're kind of just curious too. So what other people do? So right now, the way the technology works for anybody who might be newer to Pulsa, all the sensors communicate wirelessly to our gateway, and the location is based off of that gateway. So if we left the link on that can, if the link left, let's just say our lab in San Diego, and it made its way back to WestAir at that actual fill point and it got a range of a gateway, the location will actually update automatically. So some customers will do that. Well, they'll just say, hey, I'm going to label it, liquid nitrogen 1 or liquid argon 1, whatever it is. And then they just know when that asset has left. And other customers do exactly what you're talking about, or what they'll do is they'll go with the industrial scale in that situation. It sounds like you've kind of adopted a little bit more of the link when it comes to the mobile cans versus scales at this point, correct, Andy?
For liquid cylinders, correct. Yeah, we before the link came out, we had maybe 20 or 25 scales out there, but we were getting some challenges, right, as to like, the scale and how heavy it was. So getting the scale into the building, which we had some pretty strong technicians, so they were able to do it. But once it was on the ground, the ramps themselves are pretty heavy and they take up some space. So getting the container up onto the scale was a little bit of a challenge. And when our first driver complaint came in about, hey, I was trying to put this doer on, it was pretty challenging. I was like, let's go. I'll meet you there next time. Let me work on this with you. Unfortunately, it was an argon doer. So the heaviest gas that we have is a 230-liter container. It was on some older caster wheels, right? So those weren't spinning real well. And it was a tight space in a corner that we were trying to get the container up the ramp and onto the scale. So I struggled with it myself, and I leveled down with the driver, said, I get where you're coming from. I appreciate the feedback. And so when the link came out, we very quickly gravitated to the link for all liquid containers.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you. And again, I definitely appreciate that insight. So we'll just go ahead and wrap things up. So for anybody that was on the call, we'll send you all a recording of this. If you have any follow-up questions, or if there's anything that you need, you can obviously reach out to whoever your regional sales manager is. So I cover the Northeast, which is like Minnesota to Maine and a lot in between. And then we have Nick Roberts, who is down in the Southeast. And then obviously you have for WestAir, you have Sean, who covers the West. And then we'll also send a follow-up to that'll also have a link to the that'll also have a link to that actual sell-through guide. But thank you so much, everyone who hopped on. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Andy, for sharing your insight. It's always good to hear from you. It's always good to hear insight from our customers. So thank you again.